Thank you for sharing this hour tonight to come here to the auditorium to listen to Christine Schmidt, who I'll introduce very briefly. I've had the opportunity, I first had an opportunity to listen to her at Turkey Valley High School complex in March. And she talks about, today with kids, she talked about a life-changing event, and would today be a new day for you? And for me, that evening was. Having experienced multiple tragedies of suicide, my husband in 2003, and then Bryce living here as a 16-year-old, going into sophomore year at New Hampton High. The devastation and the loss from suicide is like no other. But Christine brings a message of love and hope, and it's a beautiful, beautiful message. I can't express enough gratitude. When we lose someone to suicide, and those young kids, it affects so many people. I mean, I see friends and classmates of Bryce's. I see some legal law enforcement people who were there in our yard that day. And they're the silent heroes because they do their job and they take on a heartache that is unspeakable. And I have such gratitude and respect for those individuals especially. And my hope and wish and prayer is that what Christine can share with us tonight can be used to help not only our area children, but also the community as a whole. Because depression and anxiety, and it impacts all ages. All ages. And if we can all learn and understand that it's no different than any other medical illness. Bryce was 7. He was diagnosed as a first grader, and I will always remember his pediatric psychiatrist trying to comfort my husband, who would later die from suicide, just instilling in him the fact that it's no different than diabetes. It's a chemical imbalance of the brain. But again, I thank you, and God bless you for being out here tonight. And Christine Schmidt.
Thank you so very much for welcoming me here tonight. I've seen actually many of your faces throughout the day. I don't know if the police officer who pulled me over is here tonight. Is he here anywhere? No? Okay. Well, that was kind of a funny story. It is now, I think. I was on my way here, and I'm staying at this lovely bed and breakfast, the Cozy Corner, just down the road here. And I hadn't, of course, been to New Hampton before, and I hadn't been to the high school before, and so I was using my GPS, which sounds kind of funny probably, and it actually seems funny to me now because I've been back and forth like 5 times today, so I know where I am. But this morning on my way here, I was nervous because, you know, I really want to be able to give the children especially, all of you too, but the children especially, the students, a message that's going to touch their hearts, their minds, and their souls so that they can leave that day with something new, that they can leave that day learning something and taking with them something that they can employ right away. And so I'm always praying and thinking about that, and I'm driving, and there is a stoplight over here, right here, that says no right turn on red. Who'd have thunk, right? And I wasn't reading the sign, I was praying. I was watching for the kids in the crosswalks, and I was paying attention. I was going like 5 miles an hour, I swear. And so I turn, and I'm like, dear God, you know, and all of a sudden I look in my rear view, I'm like, lights? What the heck? I didn't even get very far. I had no idea what I could have done wrong. So I slowly pulled over, and I'm like, what? No, why? Of all days when I'm so nervous. And so he comes to my window. I'm like, I don't even know what I did. I'm so sorry. And I was like talking to Mile a minute. And he is so nice. And someone explained to me he's probably the chief of police, maybe this morning. He's so nice, and he's handsome too. You can tell him I said that. He is handsome. And I said, I don't know where I'm going. I'm trying to get to the high school. And then he said, are you that speaker? Yeah, I am. And maybe that was my saving grace this morning, that, you know, I was meant to be here, and it was all good. And he's like, it's fine. And I said, okay. And then he's still looking at me, and I said, do you need to see my driver's license? He's like, yes. So, okay. And then we kind of joked, Michelle and I, that I'll probably be on the front page of the newspaper for running the red or whatever. So anyway, no harm done, I don't think. So that was my experience this morning. I had the most amazing day with your kids, with your students. I started at 8:30 this morning at the high school, and I was with the 9th through 12th graders, and they were just a great bunch of students. They were extremely attentive. Not even one time did I look out there and think, knock it off. No one had to even correct anyone, really. They were listening. And that just fueled me. That really gave me that energy to be able to want to continue to share the message with them. And when I asked questions, they answered me. They were participating, and from what I hear, that's not a usual thing. Like, you have to, they're like pulling teeth to get those kids to talk. Today was not like that. Afterwards, in the hallways, some asked me, can I hug you? Some came up to me with tears in their eyes, telling me how sorry they were for the loss of my 12-year-old daughter, Morgan. Some even shared with me very personal things that they've personally been through. Someone shared with me his attempt of suicide in the past. They shared with me things that are going on within themselves and within their families. And I felt really honored to be able to hear that. And then after that, I went over to the, well, here, I'm so confused, but okay, I was here today, and I was with the middle schoolers next. And they were in here, and I had so much fun with them. I had a great time with them. The whole room was full. And at the time, all of these lights were on. And I was like a chicken basting in here. And I'm like, oh my God. And I couldn't even see up there. I didn't even know there were kids up there until I was asking a question, and it was early on. So I wasn't ignoring them, but it was early. And all of a sudden I looked up and like, well, there's kids up there too. How long have you all been up there? They've been up there the whole time. But they were so funny because when I would ask a question, so many hands went up in the crowd. I finally just said, okay, just answer. And they were all just shooting out answers. And it was just, it was wonderful, really. And it was funny, and it was fun. And I could even see that the 8th graders were kind of laughing at some of the younger kids up there. They were like, oh my gosh, they're really getting into this, you know. But it was fun. I attempted to share some gifts with people. Now remember, the lights are in my eyes, I can't see. So I'm trying to throw stuff up there, and I'm like hitting the kid in the 3rd row. They thought that was hilarious. So anyway, we had a good time. And then I ended the day here with the 3rd and 4th graders. And they were just as much a joy, if not more, because they were so wide-eyed, and they were ready to hear a message. Each conversation I had with the different grades was unique, I think, to what they were experiencing. It was age appropriate for what they were going through. And I have to tell you, I was really surprised when I talked to the 3rd and 4th graders, because I asked them all, who texts? And most of those hands went up. And I said, who's on social media? Snapchat. These arms all went up. Who is on Facebook? These arms went up. 3rd and 4th graders. Instagram. I was surprised. And I do a lot of speaking and talking because I was kind of thinking, they're still young. They're still having fun hanging out on the playground and talking with each other. These kids are still, they're already texting. They're already in the social media spotlight. So I kind of switched gears unexpectedly to talk to them about their personal responsibility with social media. And so I'm really grateful that I had the thought to even ask them that. But it was a really good conversation. when I was packing things up, I was in the parking lot talking to Mary Beth, and we were just kind of recapping and putting our plan together for tonight. And two girls were across the parking lot on the sidewalk, and they dropped their bikes and they ran over to me. And they were all smiles. They said, "Can we hug you?" Like, oh my God, of course you can hug me. I have missed my hugs for my kids. I've been gone since yesterday morning. And they hugged me and they're like, "Thank you for coming. Thank you for talking to us." I mean, just, it amazes me that they're so open and so willing to hear the message that I have to share with them. And one thing that is common with all students that I talk to is that they can relate to Morgan, regardless of what their age is. Morgan represents all of these kids. In one way or another, Morgan is them. And they also sympathize with me. And today we learned about empathy as well. And so it was a really good day with your children. So I really thank all of you for trusting the school, for trusting Mary Beth, for trusting me to be able to talk to them and to share with them. I'm really grateful to be here. In a moment, I'm going to show you a video, and it's just a few minutes long. My older daughter, Allie, who's 21 now, she put together this video of her sister, Morgan. Morgan is one of 4 children. So I have Allison, Allie, who's 21. Morgan was 12 at the time of her death, and she's a twin. So she has a twin sister who is now almost 15, and her name is Mackenzie. And then my son, Andrew, who is 11. And so Allison put together this video, and it's of Morgan, Mackenzie, it's of our whole family, mostly Morgan, kind of through birth until. And the reason I want to show you is because I hope that by looking at pictures of Morgan and seeing pictures of our family, you can also see your children in my children. You can see yourself in me. The men out there, you can see yourself in my husband, the dad. It's not to invoke a lot of emotion from you, although it might, but it's really to get you to know who Morgan was, who we are, so that you can better understand that we are completely shocked. We are still completely shocked that this has happened to our family. So I'm going to start the video, or well, I'm not, I'm going to see here. And we'll run it just for a minute. We're going to turn the lights off, but we'll turn it back on when it's finished. many times I see that video, it's still, I mean, how could it not get to me a little bit, right? So that's my family, my children, my Morgan. What I want to share with you tonight is kind of the inside story about what happened to Morgan leading up to her death and after. These are things that I don't share with the students. This is just a conversation for us to have because I feel it's important for you to know. Morgan was not the stereotypical face of suicide, or so I thought. What I know now, what I truly believe is that there really is no face of suicide because everyone is at risk. There's not an at-risk group. You know, they say certain people who are at risk are because of abuse or drugs or alcohol or, you know, there's a number of reasons why they say people are at risk. But the fact is every single child is at risk for suicide. Because the things that happen within their minds and their bodies, no one is immune to. No one. And when I say that this could happen to our family, I know that it could happen to yours. I know that it has happened to your families. You saw in the video, Morgan, specifically Morgan, was, she comes from an intact family. My husband and I have been together, Derek and I have been together for 25 years. We have a good home life. There's no drugs and alcohol, there's no abuse. Morgan, Mackenzie, Andrew, and Allie have done all the normal things kids do. Girl Scouts, after-school clubs, sports like soccer, track, cross-country. As a family, we loved to go camping and fishing, and love. There has always been an abundance of love in our house. And I will tell you, if love was enough to save Morgan, she would still be here. And that fact is true for every single child who has left this world from suicide. If love was enough, they would be here, but it's not enough. There's so much more that we need to know and things that we can and should be doing for our kids and for ourselves. I am not a mental health professional at all. I'm not necessarily a teacher. I will tell you, I feel like I have two lives that I've been already living. My first life was before Morgan died, and that life was, I was a stay-at-home mom from Bettendorf right now. We've traveled around with my husband's job, but we're originally from a very small town in Wisconsin. I grew up in a town of 383 people. Maybe, no, 315. The town next to us was 283. So there were 315 people in my town. And in my class, there were 7 of us. 5 girls and 2 boys. And they were all related, but I wasn't. Because I was a Navy brat. And so we moved into it. So when I got there, you know, I got the pickings, a whole 2 boys. And they were all related. And it's so funny. So anyway, I know what it's like to grow up in a small town. I was a really small town. So this town is big compared to where I'm from. So we live in Bettendorf. I've done a lot of volunteering at church, at school, my community. I used to volunteer a lot at our homeless shelter in town. Again, that was my life before Morgan died, before I knew that this could happen. And it's funny because I knew this could happen. I've had 2 cousins who've taken their life to suicide. This has hit my family personally. So it wasn't that I completely thought that I was immune, but I really didn't think it was going to be my own kid. I really didn't. I had a friend of mine who took his life in high school, so I've lived that life too. Before Morgan, I am a published author. I wrote a Christian devotional. A lot of those things, I think that's what I used to be. Because on April 6, 2014, my life completely changed in a second. Amazing how fast your life can change in a second, right? So I'll back up. On March 24th of 2014, my Morgan, my straight A student, perfect attendance, silly, funny, smiling, all the time like this, all the time. That night, when I was making dinner, it was a Monday night, she came to the kitchen and said that she was sick with a headache. And she was crying, and she said, I don't want to eat, I don't feel well. And I said, okay, why don't you take some ibuprofen? I pointed to the kitchen drawer where we keep the medicine. Take some ibuprofen, go up to your room. Here's an ice pack and some soda, and I'll come check on you in a little bit. And she said, okay. And I said, is everything fine? She said, yeah, I just don't feel good. I have a headache. I said, okay. So she went upstairs. About an hour, hour and a half later, I received a text message, and it was from a friend of hers. And the message said, you need to check on Morgan. And I've never received a message from any of her friends like that, ever. And so my husband and I ran up to her room, and her lights were off. There was just one little light on, and she was all tucked in her bed. And Derek said, oh, she's sleeping. I said, no, she's not sleeping. We would not get this text message. There's something not right. So I woke her up, and she was like, oh, she was kind of groggy, but not tired groggy. It was weird. And I said, Morgan, why did I get this text message? And she said, oh, it was nothing. I was just kidding. We got in a fight. It's no big deal. Don't worry about it. I said, well, what was the message? What happened? She still wouldn't tell me what was going on, but she was slurring her words. And I said, Morgan, what is the matter with you? What's going on? And she sat up and she started crying, and she said, I accidentally took too many pills. And I said, what do you mean you accidentally took too many pills? Morgan, when she went to the drawer in the kitchen, instead of taking 2, she grabbed the whole bottle, and it was a brand new bottle of 500 ibuprofen. And she took all of them, as much as she could, without throwing up when she was trying to swallow the water to do it. And in addition to that, she went into my bathroom and she grabbed my Excedrin migraine medication, Tylenol, anything she could take to make sure that she took enough pills accidentally. And I'm telling you, you go from washing the dishes to standing here thinking your 12-year-old just overdosed on pills. And I told my husband, get the car, we're going to the emergency room. And Morgan's crying, I'm sorry. I'm like, put your pants on, let's go, get in the car. And the whole way there we were quiet. I didn't know what to say. I really did not know what to say to her. And I think back now of all the things that I want to say to her, if I had that chance again to sit in the back seat with her, what I would have said to her. And like I said, if love was enough, she'd still be here. It's not from lack of love. We spent a couple hours in the emergency room where they pumped her stomach, and they were concerned that she was going to have liver and kidney failure. And so they needed to transfer her by ambulance to Iowa City. So once we got there, she and I rode in the ambulance together, and the whole time I'm just staring at my baby, thinking, how did this happen? What happened? You know, and she's not talking. She's not telling me anything, and she feels sick. And I remember the EMT in the ambulance. He's a recovering alcoholic. And he shared with her, and I've never said this, but he shared with her the hard times that he's had in his life and how he had even thought about committing suicide. But he found a better way. He found a different way. But he was telling her, you need to hold on, kiddo. Tomorrow's a new day, and this isn't what you want to do. And she just, she wasn't hearing it. In ICU, the doctors had her on suicide watch. And if you know, in the intensive care, it's all glass around. It's just glass windows. So the lights are on, and you're in a fishbowl, basically. And she was not left alone for anything. They needed to take a urine sample. There you go. Everybody watching her going to the bathroom. There's so many different emotions as a mom. You want to protect them, but yet like, I need someone to help me protect her from herself. So you can't step in. You want to, but you can't. what we realized over a course of several hours, by this time it's 2 or 3 in the morning. I'm exhausted, of course, but I'm still in shock and wondering what's going on. Morgan stopped communicating with me because she was, I don't even know, angry. She was upset. She felt guilty. I suppose very scared, wondering what the next step was. When the doctors were kind of looking her over, they found cuts on her wrist. And they asked her, what are the cuts from? And she said, oh, she kind of laughed it off. And she said, I accidentally cut myself shaving. And all of us know, you don't accidentally cut your arm shaving. It just doesn't happen. And they're like, oh, okay. And I'm going, did you buy that? You didn't, you know, okay, I'm trying to be quiet over here. They left the room, and actually, first, they asked her right out, were you trying to kill yourself? Yes. Do you want to die? Yes. And my mouth fell open. Even then, like, she's so honest. And they're like, okay. They left the room, and I asked Morgan, I said, Morgan, I had no idea. What's going on? Why? What's going on? And she said, Mom, you didn't know because I didn't want you to know. And you weren't going to know. And I just was stunned, speechless, thinking, how could something like this go on in my house to my 12-year-old? And I'm a very vigilant parent. I'm right there. How could my child put it over on me? And how could she be so strong-willed to say, if I don't want you to know something, you're not going to know? I mean, what a wake-up call for me as a parent. Really for all of us. If our kids don't want us to know something, are we going to know? But on the other hand, when someone flat out asked her, do you want to die? Yes. I never asked any of my kids that. I just assume that, yeah, we all have bad days and shit happens, right? But nothing like this. Morgan then got almost this wild-eyed look in her, and she started kind of opening up to me and talking to me, and I said, you weren't going to leave me a note? I know that sounds strange to ask, but at the same time I'm thinking, Morgan, I was going to go into your room, and I was going to find you dead? That's what you were leaving me with? I was going to walk into your room, what, in the morning sometime, and I was going to find you dead in your bed? And she was like, well, Mom, I didn't really think it was going to work. I didn't think the pills were going to work. I was just feeling sleepy and tired. And I said, okay. Well, we all know that. I mean, that could have just been, she could have been sleepy, tired, or she could have had organ failure, and she could have gone into a coma. There's a number of things that could have happened without medical attention. But Morgan, she was in this successive thought process, and this is something that happens with people who are suicidal. They will try things till they work. They will test their own boundaries of pain and tolerance until they find something that ultimately works. So what I was told was that she tried cutting her wrist in the shower, but she said it hurt too bad. The pain of cutting herself hurt too bad. And she kind of laughed about it. She's like, oh, that hurt too bad. I'll never do that again. So I'm like, oh, okay. So then she thought she'd take the pills, and she just felt sick. She didn't think it worked. She was going to go to sleep. But her next plan was that she set her alarm for 3 o'clock that morning. Her plan was to drown herself in the creek in our backyard. And I was like, how were you going to do that? She was going to take duct tape somehow tape up her face, and I don't know. But she's telling me this, and I'm like, oh my God, are you serious? She felt this kind of release from being able to tell me what had been going on inside her mind. And it was scary. Things that I never think about. I do now, but I didn't then. And much less didn't think that my Morgan. I mean, I don't think about this with any of my kids. But my Morgan was just responsible, was so much. And that was Morgan. So for a week, now, that day, they said, well, she's medically cleared to go home. She's fine inside, medically clear. And I said, oh no, I have a 12-year-old who tried to take her own life. I can't take her home. We don't even know what happened. How can I take her home? And they said, well, you can have her admitted here. We have a bed open. Now, then I didn't realize what a gift those words, we have a bed open, are. But if you're in this world of mental health like I am now, you know that beds just aren't open somewhere in any kind of facilities. There was a bed open for Morgan, and so I admitted her. She did not want to be there. I could already see the wheels turning in her head, that all of a sudden she just dropped out of sight from her friends, from school, from what was going on. People were going to talk. And when I was asking her, why would you do this? She said, there's so much drama. There's just so much drama, and I'm just done with it. I'm just done with this life. I'm done. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of trying, and I'm done. I knew things were bad between some of her friends, and I knew that there were some aspects of social media that were getting to her. I understood that, and I thought that we were working through it. I didn't realize how deep all of that was cutting. I didn't know how much it was affecting her. While she was in the inpatient care, she was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder and with depression. I'm like, well, yeah, no kidding, right? But she was. And when she was there for that week, I started to see a Morgan that I hadn't seen in a long time. She was this happy, playful kid again, where she had turned, now I look back, she had turned to a very serious young person, very intentional in everything that she did. Her schoolwork, things had to be perfect. She seemed like she was always trying to live up to what other people wanted her to be or wanted her to look like. I could see that she was on this kind of walking a tightrope thing. And then all of a sudden in the hospital, I saw just this fun 12-year-old, and she was just silly. But there, she was not exposed to any social media. She had no access to cell phones, no access to the outside world at all. And I had asked her, so do you miss your, you miss your phone? You miss any of that? And she's like, no, it's actually a relief not to have it. So once she disconnected from that world, she felt so much better. And I saw this kid that I didn't even realize I'd been missing her, but I had missed her. 2 days before Morgan was released, we had a family meeting. And we were talking about different rules in the house. We were going to start limiting the time on the cell phone and on social media. We were going to start making sure that she was spending more time with the family, because she had started to hang out alone in the basement and in her room a lot. And that seems normal, and to an extent it is, but we wanted to make sure that Morgan was back with the family. We wanted to make sure that she was having more face time. Some of the rules and things that we were talking about were not, they're just good stuff. It really wasn't anything that was outrageous at all. And she really fought us on it that one day. Well, the social worker came in, and she was sitting with us, and she said, well, Morgan, you want to get out of here, right? And she said, either you start following some of these rules and you kind of go along with the plan, or you're not going to be leaving here when you want to leave here. Our Morgan was very smart, intelligent, charming, and it's almost like you could see that light bulb go off in her head, like, okay, I know how to play this game now. I'm going to go along with what you say. I want to get the heck out of here. She'd been there for over a week. And when Morgan was excused and I was talking with the social worker, I said, you did see that, right? You saw that she just played right into what she said. She says, yeah, well, we'll just give it a day. And we gave it, I think, a day or two. Morgan was released. And when I was visiting with the social worker, she said, Christine, she said, you know what, Morgan is a doll. Everyone loves her here. She's smart, she's sweet, she's funny. And you know what, this was an isolated incident. We really think that, she was just going through something, she experimented with it. She's going to be fine. Now when you get home, hide the medication, hide the razor blade, but give her her space. She's going to need her space, but with boundaries, but give her some space. it seems intuitive now. They didn't tell me to hide certain things. They didn't tell me watch her every move. They didn't say sleep with her. And you would think, well, of course you would. I'm telling you, yes, hindsight is 20/20. It's also very evil. It is. This picture was taken the day Morgan was released. She's hugging her twin sister in this picture, Mackenzie. She was released on a Wednesday. She did not go to school that day because I wanted her to be able to rest at home, and she just needed to kind of get her feet on her. Thursday, she went to school half day, and she was trying to talk to certain friends about where she had been. Because of course everyone's wondering, where's Morgan been for over a week? And her twin sister knew not to say anything until Morgan gave the okay. I talked to the school and I said specifically, please do not talk about this. We're not ready to do this yet. I didn't know what it meant to try to reintegrate a child back into the classroom or into the school after they'd been through an experience like this. Morgan went to school on Friday, which was April 4th, 2014. And she texted me just after lunch break. And she said, Mom, they know. And I said, what do you mean they know? She said, they all know. They're talking about it. They're saying things to me. And I called the school right away. And I talked to the guidance counselor and the principal. And I said, you need to find Morgan. She's very upset. This is what's going on. And they said, okay, we'll take care of it. We'll find her. I didn't hear back from the school. I didn't hear back from Morgan and Mackenzie, so I knew that they'd be coming home on the bus in a short time. And when they got home, they told me, Morgan told me, Mom, you know what they did? They put me in a room, and they asked me what happened, and I told them what girls were saying things. They went and got those girls, and they brought them in the room with Morgan. And they said, Morgan said you did this, you said this. And they said, no, we didn't. Well, you didn't say anything like that. And then they said to Morgan, well, Morgan, is it true or is it isn't? Morgan said, it's not true. It's not a big deal, never mind. So already this fragile child, and here she has to confront these people. So Morgan came home that Friday. She told me about this experience. I'm like, oh my gosh, what can we, what are we going to do? I was able to get Morgan an appointment with a child psychiatrist on Monday, April 7th, which is unheard of. It just doesn't happen, but I did. The social worker told me not to come back for 2 weeks for a follow-up appointment. She's fine. On Saturday night, April 5th, Morgan and I were taking a walk, just the two of us, and it was just a really beautiful day. And it was probably about 4 or 5 o'clock or something like that, I don't know. And we were walking, and I said, she was talking about the nurses and the people who were in the psych unit. And she said, Mom, there's some really great people that work there. And I said, yeah. And she said, and did you know this one nurse, she used to have a hard time when she was a teenager. And that's why she's doing what she's doing now. And I said, yeah, it's usually, we get inspired by things that happen in our lives. And she said, that's what I want to do. She said that night, she said, I want to go to the University of Madison, Wisconsin, where her dad went. She wanted to be some sort of counselor, nurse with kids. And I said, you know what, Morgan? I think you're going to be a success story. I think you're going to be one of the success stories. And she said, Mom, there's a lot of success stories that come out of there. And I said, I'm sure there are. And I think it's going to be you. And she said, yeah, you too. And so that Saturday night I made her favorite dinner, which is nothing special. It's shake and bake and corn on the cob. She loved it, and she ate it all, and cheesy potatoes. So I made that for her. And Sunday morning, we were all getting ready for church. And Morgan was in the bathroom, and she said she felt really sick to her stomach, and she was like throwing up a little bit. And I don't know about you, but my kids, they're all about like, oh, I'm sick. I can't go to church. I can't do this. But as soon as we say we're not going, then they're like, oh, I'm fine, man. I'm like, well, you gotta go. Come on, get up. Let's go have some toast and some Sprite. Let's go to the kitchen, And So I made her toast and Sprite, and she was at the kitchen counter at the island. I can still see her. And we were just talking about the day we were going to go on a picnic, and we were going to go hiking in these caves in Macokota Caves State Park by our house. And she said, do I really have to go, Mom? I really just don't feel good. And I was looking at her, and we were all in the kitchen together. And I was looking at my husband across the room, and I'm looking at him like, what do you think? And I know he's thinking the same thing, that our doctors had told us, give her some space, she's fine. I've been talking to her, I've been constantly asking her, are you okay? Anything you want to talk about? She was like, Mom, I'm fine, no more talking. I'm fine. She looked at me and she said, Mom, I'm not sad. I just don't feel good. And I'll see you when we get home. And I said, okay. I said, okay. I said, well, if you feel better, do the dishes. Clean up the kitchen a little bit. And I remember she just kind of smiled. And then we were getting ready to leave. And I went over to her and I put my hands right on her little face. And I looked into her eyes and I said, Morgan, I love you and I'll be right back. And I gave her a kiss and she said, I love you too, Mom. And then my husband walked over to her and gave her a hug. And she hugged him like this big bear hug. We didn't even talk about it. We just like, okay, see you later. We walked out the door. We were at church. We were gone for an hour. And while we were there, we were praying for Morgan, that she would find peace and that she'd feel better and, all of these things. But when we got home, on the way, we tried calling. Morgan wasn't answering the phone. She was not texting back. She wasn't Snapchatting, like all the usual things. We could not get a hold of Morgan. We walked in the door and it was very, very quiet. And I'm really one of those calm people where I go, okay, I'm just going to take it all in. I don't want to, upset anybody else here wondering where's Morgan. And so we were walking around the house and I start looking for her and I'm calling her name. She's not answering and I'm thinking that she's sleeping somewhere. She fell asleep on the couch somewhere because she wasn't feeling good. And I can't find her. I looked upstairs, downstairs. I looked out in the creek. I didn't tell anybody else what I was doing. And then I said, all right, we need to find Morgan. Everyone, please look for Morgan. And I could see that her tennis shoes were by the door. The dog was outside. So, seconds later, Mackenzie, Morgan's sister, screamed. She was in the basement where I had just been. And she found Morgan. And she screamed, she hung herself. And my husband and I ran as fast as we could. I still had my coat and my shoes on from church. We ran to Morgan, and I tell you this because these are things that no one told me about. Yet, we had this exercise kind of weightlifting thing in our house where, the bar was very high. And Morgan had taken one of her decorative, like the scarves, one of the pretty scarves that I had bought her, and she had tied it up so high, and she had hung herself from that. And she had used a chair to kick out. There was so much there to make sure that it worked. And she was so high that I had to hold her up on my tiptoes so my husband could try to get her down. And in the meantime, my daughter Mackenzie, Morgan's twin, is calling 911. And within minutes, 2.5 minutes, we had police, fire, and ambulance at our house. And when they came downstairs, we were trying CPR. My husband had never done it before. He had no idea how long she'd been there. She was still warm to the touch. Remember, we'd only been gone for an hour. Just an hour. And so when they got there, they were doing the heart thing, and they had her hooked up to oxygen, and they had her hooked up to something they called the miracle worker. They didn't tell me what it was, but they said, if anything's going to work, it's going to be this. They were working on her here in my house. We transported Morgan by ambulance, and there were like 10 people in the back doing all sorts of stuff, and I'm just sitting there like, please, God, you can do this. And I'm saying, Morgan, please come back. Morgan, how could you do this? You know why? At the hospital, they continued to work on her for like 25 more minutes. The doctor came over to us and he said, I will continue to try this, and we might be able to get her heart started. But if we do, this will not be your child. She's been without oxygen for too long. And if she survives, she'll live in a nursing home for the rest of her life. And they said, we'll do what you want us to do. And I remember my husband very subtly almost stepping back, letting me, her mom, make the choice to continue or not. And I just knew that that wouldn't be Morgan. It wouldn't be Morgan. And so the most loving thing I could do for her in that moment was say, just stop. One of the hardest things I've ever done. Stop trying to save my child. So that day was a very tragic, horrible day that something punched a hole in our world and took Morgan with it. And ever since, even still, I'm trying to figure out why and how this happened. When we had to leave her there, we all went home and we were numb. And I was sitting on the couch, and it's like her memory was so fresh, I could still see her sitting right there in front of me. It was like just hours before I could have just touched her. But it was gone. How could this happen? So I think the next night, I was in her bedroom, and I was looking up at this dream sign in her room. And I was talking to her, I was saying, all right, I don't know what happened here, Morgan. I don't know why, but somehow we're going to figure it out. I'm going to work from here, and you're going to work from there, and we're going to make a difference. I can't just sit still. I can't not talk about Morgan. I can't not share our experience. And it's only because I want to help you. I want to help your children. I want to help the people that you know. We've got to do something. That's what I felt. And so days, months, weeks, it all goes by very fast and slowly at the same time. I had a dream one night where I was constantly asking Morgan in my daylight, where are you at? Are you at peace? Are you okay? That's a question we always have when people pass. We just want to know that they're okay, especially our children when we can't follow them. And I had a dream that morning, early morning, and it was Morgan just looking at me, and she said, Mom, it's all love, only love. And I'm like, what? And she said, it's all love, only love, 3 times. And it got louder and louder every time, and then I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh. So I felt in that moment, not only was Morgan sharing with me that where she was and experiencing, was it all love and only love. And that's the only thing she said to me. But over time, that became a message for me to want to share with everyone else, that this life is about love. It has to be about love. It has to be about kindness and compassion that we show each other, but it also has to be that love and kindness that we show ourselves. And that means taking care of ourselves, taking care of our minds, our hearts, and our bodies, allowing those we love to get into our inner circle, to share. So when I talk to the kids, and I talk to them about anxiety and depression and about being kind, it's because none of us are mind readers, right? And if our kids don't want us to know something, we're not going to know it. That's why they need to know what's going on first and recognize those signs of depression and anxiety. They need to know how to ask for help, and they need to know that it's safe and it's okay and necessary to ask for help, that there is hope, that they're never alone, even when depression lies. They're never alone. There is help. There is hope. And so that's my message to the children, and that's been my message in wanting to share the experience of what happened to Morgan. Because as I said, there is no at-risk group anymore. They're all at risk. Morgan could be any one of your children. I could be you. I promise you, I'm no different than any of you. We are so alike in so many different ways we would find out if we sat down and talked. I'm not a big statistics or number person, because I think that you can read a lot of these things on your own, but I found certain numbers to be quite shocking. Since 1980, suicide in ages 10 to 14 has gone up 128%. 128% in the last 2 decades. More teens die by suicide than heart disease, lung cancer, AIDS, birth defects together. This is what's killing our children, is suicide. 4 out of 5 of these kids show true signs, very evident, clear signs, warning signs. They're there. We either don't know how to look for them, we don't know what they are, or we're in denial. We don't think it's our kid, it's not going to be my kid. I choose to think it's more that we just don't know exactly what to look for. My example is, all I know is Morgan. When I said she was a straight A student, perfect attendance, I thought that her desire to make everything just right was part of her personality. Some of that I think it is. There's also this obsessive component that comes with that sometimes, of being a perfectionist sometimes. She had to be somewhere on time all the time. If things didn't go her way, she'd kind of freak out. And you're like, gosh, just chill out a little bit, because I'm pretty easy going, you know? And the other kids, the other 3, they're like that too. One of Morgan's twin sister was diagnosed when she was 8 years old with anxiety and depression. She looked completely different than Morgan. What a mistake that was. Think about this. What I was thinking was that none of my other kids were diagnosed the same or looked the same in their behaviors as Mackenzie did. That didn't mean it didn't exist, I just didn't see it. It was different. Anxiety disorders, depression disorders, the symptoms are just as unique as the people who are experiencing them. So if you have kids, grandkids, whatever, just because they don't look exactly alike doesn't mean that they both can't have the similar things going on. What I know about Morgan was that she was a fighter. She fought through the distraction in her head, kind of the noise that was there, the excessive thoughts. She fought through it. She didn't have to. Morgan knew that she could come to me. All of my kids know that they can talk to me and come to me. Morgan was a very strong individual and thought she could handle what was going on herself. The thing about depression and anxiety disorders is you can't help it. You don't ask for it. And unless you seek that real medical help sometimes, it's not just going to get better on its own. But it's a very normal thing, as we talk about, just like diabetes. Any of those other disorders or chemical imbalances. If anyone here had cancer, we wouldn't just wish you luck and say, well, maybe you'll get better tomorrow. You know, put a smile on your face. No, we wouldn't do that. I've had a lot of people, not a lot, but a few people say to me, she was only 12 years old. How does a 12-year-old even know what to do? How do they even know that? My answer is that, well, 12-year-olds are a lot more sophisticated than we probably give them credit for. Listen, the 3rd and 4th graders are already texting. They probably already know more about things than you do. They know more than I do. They may not know what depression is necessarily. They don't know what the definition of anxiety is. Maybe not even suicide. But they all know how they feel. They all know how they feel. People who take their own lives, who commit suicide, don't want to die. They just want the pain to stop. They just want the pain to stop. The youngest reported suicide is a 5-year-old boy and a 6-year-old girl. And you say they're way too young. They were in pain. Their heart and their mind was telling them that this life just wasn't for them. Why? One of them, she was punished for doing something. She went to her room and she said, "I'll show you, Mom," and she hung herself from her bed. The boy was upset that his dad had passed away, and he took his dad's favorite necktie and hung himself in the closet. I say these things to you because this is what's happening. I had never heard of any of that before I started reading and doing all this. Some things you don't want to know, right? So, after several months went by and I knew that I needed to do something, I really came to a point where I wanted to do more than just survive this, because that's really what you do. You survive, and sometimes barely, and that's the truth. And I came across this quote, and it said, "The recipe to life is not in surviving, it's in finding something to live for." So I don't want to just survive. I have to find something to live for. I'm living for my kids. I'm living for Morgan, and I'm trying to be her voice. I'm living to help your kids in your communities by learning things that I didn't know, by living through my experience. Again, I just stress it enough, if love was enough, Morgan would be here. And so I want to take you into my advice. Like I said, I'm just here to share my story. In any capacity, and you have children, and it's your responsibility, please have the deep talk. Have the serious talk with those kids. Look in their eyes and ask them. And it's going to be a tough conversation. Take the time for it, but ask that question. Have you thought about killing yourself? I'm going to tell you, some people think that if you don't bring it up, that it's okay. You're not, we're just not going to bring it up. Because I don't want to bring up something to put an idea in their head. I will tell you, there is nothing you can say to these kids, and you're not going to be putting anything in their heads. It's just like if you said to me, we're talking about death and dying. I'm not all of a sudden go, "Oh, that was a good idea. Never thought of that." Someone who has suicidal thoughts, even as young as what we're talking about, these are thoughts that don't go away. They're not put there by anyone. They're not really put there by television or anything else. What they know is that there's pain and they want it to go away. How's it going to go away? I am sick of this life. I am done. And once they decide that that's an option, that gnawing thought is right here. It's right here in your ear. Can you imagine if there was something so heavy on your heart and on your mind, and you were like just dying to spit it out, but you never knew how to say it? And what if you had someone come up to you, someone who you love, someone who loved you, and you said to them, "This is a tough question, but I have to ask," and you are completely safe to answer it honestly. Have you thought about killing yourself? Wow. My prayer, my hope is that they would open up to you, that they would feel comfortable, that they will feel honest. And I believe that if we have enough of those conversations with them, that even if the first time they don't completely open up, because they're going to go back and think about it, maybe they're like, "Oh God, should I really say it? How is she going to react? How is he going to react? What's going to happen?" Let them know what's going to happen. You're going to love them and you're going to support them, and you'll do absolutely anything in your power to make sure that they are happy and healthy. You are going to provide that help and that hope for them if they need it. You are their soft place to land. Morgan went to pediatrician just weeks before she died. And I sat there, and the pediatrician was even asking her like these questions. "Oh, do you want to hurt yourself? Do you want to..." No. Okay. Okay, so maybe if you said, "You want to hurt yourself?" "No, I want to kill myself." It's a big difference. That's blunt, but that's the truth. That's the truth. That's what these kids are thinking. Maybe they've had a chance to say something that was on the tip of their tongue and they weren't given enough opportunity to share. I didn't ask my kids. I didn't ask Morgan. I didn't think I had to. I saw her as smiling and happy going to school. I didn't think I had to. If I had known I should, would I have? I really hope that I would have. So when you're having this talk with your kids, with the people in your charge, you go deep, and then you go deeper, okay? So you get in there and you're looking in their eyes and you're asking those questions. And just when you think that you've kind of scraped the surface, go a little deeper. Keep trying to communicate. And sometimes these kids, they're going to block you out, they're going to push you away, they don't want to talk. But if they know that your door is always open and your arms are always open, they will share with you. I also believe, to an extent, in sharing our personal experiences with our kids. That's appropriate. And I say that such as, you know, when kids are suffering inside, whether it's depression, anxiety, maybe they've even gotten to the point where they've been diagnosed with something, there are a lot of people, parents, who don't share with them, well, yeah, I've been on an antidepressant for years. They think it's their business. I don't need to share it. You're a kid, I'm an adult. Do you know how isolating and lonely it can feel when that is you, and especially if you're a child and you don't understand all of this? But how much more loving and welcoming and understanding would it be if you said, hey, we're in this together, kiddo. You're not alone. You're never alone. And in fact, I got stuff too. We all have something. To normalize the conversation, especially within your own homes, is essential. Because kids, they already feel odd and awkward. But when you add on anxiety and depression, they can feel even more isolated and alone. As I said, Morgan knew that she could talk to me. The door was always open. I never talked to her about having a trusted adult in her life because I didn't think I had to, because I was it, and I knew my kids they tell me everything. They tell me things that I don't even want to know. Do you know what I'm talking about? I'm like, stop, oh, la, la, la. Seriously, I've lived through that too. When I was talking to your kids today, one of the biggest things I mentioned was having a trusted adult in their life. I said to them, some of you, it's going to be your parents, it's the people that you live with. Sometimes it might be your best friend's mom or dad. It might be your aunt, your uncle, a teacher, whoever it is. Every single kid here and at the high school raised their hands that they knew who their trusted adult was. And I said to them, I promise you that your trusted adult knows exactly who they are in your life, and they know exactly what they mean to you. And I encourage them that when they're going through something, when they need to empty their cup, and I'll share with you what that means, when they need to do that and talk to the trusted adult, they need to keep that person in mind. What I would encourage you to do when you talk to your kids tonight, tomorrow if it's too late, talk to them about who their trusted adult is. Don't be offended if it's not you. Sometimes it's not us. Sometimes it's not us parents, because for whatever reason, they don't want to, or I don't know why kids think the way they do. Sometimes it might not be you, but they have to have someone. They have to have someone they can go to. I don't think Morgan, this wouldn't have changed. Morgan wouldn't have talked to anybody. That's just how she was. Somehow, I wish I could have kind of infiltrated her heart and her mind a lot sooner, and maybe I could have helped her. But there are friends of hers and their parents. I know she adored them, and I'm telling you right now, they're thinking and wishing that she would have talked to them even. You know, there's so much guilt and sadness in this hole after someone like this, leaves like this. So I encourage you, don't be offended if you're not the trusted adult, but make sure your kid knows that they need to have one, and that it's okay with you if they talk to that person. Okay? It's not really like, I'm going to pick your trusted adult for you, okay? It doesn't really work like that necessarily. Talk to them about having a trusted adult and that you're okay. A big thing I talked about today was kindness with these kids. While the social bullying and online bullying was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back with Morgan, of course it wasn't the main cause. Depression and anxiety really ate at Morgan for, we don't even know how long. But what happened in the days leading up to Morgan's death was not only what was going on at school, But Morgan was starting to receive anonymous text messages, and she was online on Ask FM, Snapchatting, things like that. Kids saying to her, next time do it right. Next time hang yourself. You should have just died the first time. All these horrible, horrible things that I didn't know about until after she was gone, because she didn't share it with me. So I talked today about the kids being compassionate and kind and having empathy. Always, always. You know, our kids, from the time they're tiny until whenever, they are watching every move we make. Every move we make, whether we know it or not. They're listening in the car when we're on the phone. They're listening to our conversations in the backyard or in the kitchen or at school. We, as the adults, we need to exhibit behavior worth emulating, right? We need to show them how it's done. We can't expect them do as I say and not as I do. We are their first teachers. We need to show them how to be kind, how to grow up in a world where they're loving individuals. We need to be their first teachers and inspire them to do better and to be better. The biggest and first thing that comes to my mind is our cell phones and our electronics. I'm at sporting events and I see moms all the time on here or texting or dads working, whatever it is. We as a society aren't making eye contact with our kids anymore. We're not having these conversations. We're allowing them to grow up and learn from whatever might be online and from their friends. They're like teaching each other and no one knows what they're doing. The blind leading the blind. We need to get back involved. And I'm not saying that all of you aren't. That's just something that first came to mind, was to talk to your kids. Have that deep conversation. Talk about the phones. I polled the kids and I said to them, what is one of your biggest creators of anxiety, sources of anxiety for you? And they all said cell phones. Cell phones. These things that they are attached to, their extra appendage, is, they will admit, is the thing that is causing and creating the most anxiety in their life. Because they need to know what's going on. And if they don't, it's crushing. So I talked to the kids today about trying to help police themselves a little bit. Try to step back from that. Try not to get so wound up and warped into this social life, this life that is not social. But we need to help. We need to help with that behavior. We need to help them learn how to step back from those things. Like I said, when Morgan was in the hospital, at first she was like, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? But after a couple days, it was so freeing. And I saw my sweet, playful child again. I've talked to parents who have limited the use of their kids' cell phones and access and stuff like that. I've actually talked to the teenagers myself, and they have told me it was tough at first, but now it's fine. Like, they got rid of Snapchat, and they got rid of these things that were really causing a lot of grief for them, and they haven't looked back. So I ask you to be brave and have courage to do some of these hard things. You know, we want to be our kids' friends, and we need to be their parents first and watching out for their best interest. I'll show you, because I want to be conscientious of your time here, what I shared with your kids today about talking and your trusted adult. I had this glass of water, and I asked them all, how much does it weigh? You know, how heavy do you think it is? And, oh, 25 pounds, or, I'm like, well, thank goodness, no, it doesn't weigh that much. So what I said to them, though, is I said, imagine if I had to hold on to this all day long. I mean, at first it's not very heavy, but after an hour it's starting to hurt my arm. I mean, I have arthritis, and I've got lots of problems already, and it's hurting my hands and my arms. And I said, what if you had to do this at night? You had to do your homework and eat. Then you have to go to bed. You have to sleep with this glass of water. You can't put it down. And then the next day go to school and so forth. It's still here. It's not going anywhere because you haven't done anything with it yet, right? Pretty soon, this glass of water really starts to prohibit you from doing the things that you love to do, like eating. Like, you might even go, I'm right-handed, I'm left. You know why it's not even worth eating anymore? Because I'm like missing my mouth, right? So I'm not gonna eat anymore. I can't sleep very well. I'm not gonna go to sports because I can't run with a glass of water. Get the point? So what I was telling them was, this glass represents your mind, your heart, and your body. And the water in it represents all of the unwanted thoughts and feelings that you have. And the unwanted thoughts and feelings are things that are put there, whether it's by social media, things that are happening at school, at home. Maybe it's this chemical imbalance that's creating this anxiety and depression. Either way, it's unwanted. We didn't ask for this. We don't want to feel this way. But it's filling our cup. Somehow, we have to figure out how to empty our cup so that we can reach for that joy that's within the next breath. So we can do the things that we love to do so that we can be happy and healthy. We all need to empty our cup. And that's where the trusted adult came in. Emptying your cup is communicating. Emptying your cup is communicating. So how do we communicate? First and obvious is that we're going to talk with our trusted adult. Sometimes, I know, as I said, it's really hard to just spit out things, even if it's on the tip of your tongue and it's really eating at you and you know you have to and you want to say something. It's difficult. Okay, so the main message was find a way that works for you. How can you communicate what you need to? How can you empty your cup? If you feel like you can't quite blurt it out, I introduced the idea of having a thoughts journal where they would share with you. You have permission to look in their journal every day. They might not write in it every day, but this is their way to empty their cup. This is their way to share with all of you what's on their minds, their hearts, and their bodies. And together, you can talk about whether or not they want you to help fix it, whatever it is, or they just want you to know what's going on so that they can get on with life. So this is one thought. I introduced this kind of trigger object, I call it. I don't know what else to call it, but I said they need to find something, if this is going to work for them, something at home, something odd, unusual. I said, not your shoes, because if you leave your shoes out, you're going to get in trouble. But find something odd and unusual. Talk to your people who you live with, who care about you, and say, when you see this sitting on the kitchen table, that's a sign for you that I need to talk about something. I have something to say, but I need you to come to me. It takes the pressure off of the kid. It takes the pressure off of having that big conversation of interrupting you, because that's what they think they're doing. They think that it's never a good time. So when you see this odd and unusual object that you have established ahead of time, that's your responsibility to go to them and say, okay, what's going on? But be sincere about it. Be ready to listen. Be ready to act if you need to. Empathy. We have to have it even with our kids. You know, it's really easy for us to say, oh, that's all? Don't worry about it. It's going to be fine tomorrow, or who cares, right? Remember, we have a lifetime of experience and maturity to know that tomorrow is a better day. We have that perspective. Our children do not yet. It is a fact that they see right here. They can't really see around it. All they see is right here. What they are experiencing, no matter if they're this big or this big, it is completely relevant to them in their life. It is important. We cannot downplay it, but have empathy for them and talk to them. Ask them, how do you want me to help you? I had a 3rd or 4th grader today say to me, sat in the second row today, he said, what if your friend pushes you off your bike and you don't really care, but your parents do? And I was like, okay, so you just wanted to tell them what was happening? You didn't want them to call the mom and say, hey, what's wrong with your kid? And he's like, yeah. And I said, okay, it's a really good question. Our kids don't always want us to fix things for them, even though we think we want to come in and save the day. They just want to tell us. So if we want to hear the big stuff, we got to hear the little stuff too. So open that door. So this was a really cool thing, and I always try to have giveaways. So I was throwing it, I couldn't even see them up there. I was hitting the wall, and they thought that was really funny. So some of your kids, some of your people might have one of these. Does anyone here? Yeah, anyway, it was pretty fun and it was cute. So that's what we talk about, is somehow they have to find a way to empty their cup and to share with all of you. I think I'm about done, but I want to tell you, again, you know the name of my coalition. It's All Love, Only Love Coalition. I got the name, of course, from a dream and what I feel like we need to share with each other and taking care of ourselves and our kids. Coalition means, the definition is come together as one. So together, we're going to make a difference. Together, we're going to teach our kids how to make a difference. And I'm really glad that we were able to have this talk tonight, because for those of you who had kids with me today, they saw kind of this one half, and now you see the other half, and I hope that you can really bring this message home to your families. When I started this, it is actually a nonprofit. It's a 501c3. Again, I never thought I'd be running any kind of business or corporation or anything like that. It's nonprofit. And I did it under this name for a couple reasons, because it was, I think it's more helpful for me to feel like, we're a coalition, we're doing this together. It's not just me who cares about this, we're doing it all together. And something that I'm working on, in addition to talking to schools and communities, in March I went to Washington, D.C. because I really believe in having mandatory mental health educating in schools. Because I believe that our kids are the first to notice if something's happening within themselves. But they need those signs. They need to know what's happening. They need to know where and how to ask for help. There's only one of me. However, there are so many surviving parents in this club that no one wants to be in. But it is growing every single day. So when I went to Washington, D.C., it was literally, there were like 10 of us. We were knocking on doors of senators, asking them to help pass a bill to make it mandatory. So yes, we would like it on a federal level, where it was across the board, this is what we want to do. But we also know that it might take a little bit longer than that, and so going state by state. And so we're here in Iowa. We went to Joni Ernst. I went to, I can't remember my names now, but we went to many, many different states. And I don't think it was because of what we did, but it is because of people like me who feel as passionate about this. But the state of Missouri recently passed a mandatory law for educating in their schools, unanimously. So this is something that many, many people care about. Being an election year right now, this is a great opportunity for all of us to be questioning our representatives too, what they believe in, asking and demanding that they believe in the same kind of things that we do for our children. So maybe as time goes on, you'll hear more of that, but I just ask you to try to support those types of things. Support what might be happening inside your schools, in your communities, and really it is all about the love. On the brochures that you have, I have a website that I did myself. So a stay-at-home mom who didn't know enough, anyway, I didn't even graduate from college. Anyway, visit my website. You'll see a little bit more about my family and some things that I do. I am on Facebook everywhere. I have all sorts of different social media sites because that's where the kids are. Today, I've already received 4 emails before coming here from your children who I talked to today. And they're great emails. A lot of them were thanking me again for the conversation today. One of them was asking for help. I was at a middle school a few days ago, and a child, she was in 8th grade, and she said to me, "I'm not ready to die, but I'm afraid of my own thoughts, and I don't know how to talk to my family." These are your children. I'm grateful that they're talking to me, and when they do, I pass that information along. I don't keep it to myself, I do pass it along. But I want you to know that some of them are dying to talk. They're dying to get it off of their chests and off their minds and off their hearts, but they don't know how. So I will pray that you have these deep conversations and that you continue the conversation. Are there any questions for me at all tonight? I feel like I went over a lot. And I so appreciate your time too.
That's Iowa passed that.
They have not. Iowa, so some states, I have something here, I'll read it. A little map here. Is my microphone still working farther? Okay, Iowa. I think this is interesting to know. Over 7 times as many people die by suicide in Iowa annually than by homicide. So if we were to take the number of deaths by suicide, and we were to say, oh, this is by child homicide, do you think we'd be doing something about it? I mean, but they don't. People just don't talk about it. It's a self-hurt crime, right? Children are killing themselves, so no one else is. So it must not be that big of a problem. If it were homicide, if it were murder, everyone would be wondering, what can we do? On average, 1 person dies by suicide every 20 hours in the state of Iowa. So I am receiving this information, October 2015, because that's the most recent we can get. And it's by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And I'm actually, I'm on the, I chair one of the boards on that. State laws by school district and policies. So Iowa is here in the green, and it says unique school prevention approach. So what that means is that the school isn't made to do any type of suicide prevention, but they have the ability to do it if they want to. So that's what allows me to be able to come here, is that we can talk about it, and each school can take it upon themselves to have their own unique approach, which might mean that some of them, once a semester, might talk about it, or talk about some sort of mental health, but they're not required to. So if you would look, I know it's hard to see here, but these dark kind of blue purple states here, there's 2, 4, 6, 7 states in the United States require school policy or a program. 7 out of the 50 states only require, and now Missouri's added to that, require school policy or program. The gray is there's absolutely no program in place at all. They're not required to do anything, and they don't even take a stance that we're going to try. And then the green, that's the unique, that's Iowa. And then encouraged school policy or program is this light blue. So those states encourage it, but they don't have to. So this is an important topic. It is something that's happening with our children. So we need to make sure that we're teaching them, and that we're taking care of them, and that we're doing the very best that we can. Let's see. Are there any other questions at all? Yes?
I have a question, but I took a course a while back from Northeast Iowa Community College, and it was called First Aid Mental Health.
Yes.
It's a fascinating course.
Yes.
It was a couple of days, and class participation was very interesting. But the book itself actually gave definitions of the different mental illnesses.
Yes.
And certain questions to ask, and basically the course was to help prevent suicide. I also saw a program, and I wish now I had documented this. It was a professor at a college who worked specifically on this, and it's specific questions that they're using, not like you just mentioned with the doctor's answer yourself. There were specific questions that they are using with some of the veterans that are coming back from traumatic situations. And by using these specific questions, they are identifying early intervention, and they said the suicide rate was like reduced 60% because they asked the right questions early.
Absolutely.
Now I
And that's absolutely true. They even say that 80 to 90% of all suicides with kids can be prevented with that early detection because there is help available for them. What you're speaking about, the mental health class, I believe that's free. In some communities it's free anyway. It is a 2-day and you have to go both days to be certified in youth mental health training. And anyone can do it. They don't offer it very often. I mean, it's offered maybe twice a year depending on where you're at. But they have fantastic information in that. And like I said, anyone can employ that. So your schools, it is important information. What? Yes, absolutely. So these are things that we can do. And there are a number of programs out there with curriculum that are available for the schools. None of us need to, recreate the wheel here. There are proven programs out there that do work. So at one time I thought about writing a curriculum. Like, I'm not a teacher and that's just above me. My passion is here to talk to you. But those things are available and there are resources. So, yeah.
And have you come across now with your travel and being to the school districts and that, have you seen implementation in some of the school districts here in Iowa regarding curriculum and?
No.
No?
No. I live in the Quad Cities in Bettendorf, and our schools, some of our schools are just now starting to kind of work in some worksheets about mental health. So in the high schools, they're talking about, like, they'll go through the different kinds of depression, bipolar disorder, but it's very, very dry. It's just textbook kind of stuff, but they're not really getting into the meat of that to necessarily, in my opinion, help kids identify problems within possibly themselves. It's just kind of this overall. They're still talking about, at least in our schools, about HIV and AIDS over some of these other serious things like suicide and mental health. So yes, we talk about HIV and AIDS, but it's not as big a deal as it was in the 80s and the 90s when we were kids. I mean, it's just not, they're kind of like, oh, okay. But if I'm telling you, when I'm talking to these kids about suicide and about mental health, they are all ears. You can hear a pin drop because these are things that are relevant to them right now. They want to know and they want to hear about it and they want to talk about it. So we have to give them a forum to do so. My advice has been to not take away from any additional school time, but to integrate a program into the health classes or the human growth and development classes. And you can start as early as the kindergarten, first grade. It's all whatever is age appropriate and developmentally appropriate. You just build on it, the building blocks of mental health. Just like we talk about sex education, we talk about hormones and biological changes. We need to be talking about these things too. So it takes really no extra time. I mean, I'm not an administrator, but I'm not asking for, take away music and input this. Just work in a couple extra lessons every semester on mental health, but the real stuff, so the kids know what to look for in themselves. They need to be the ones to recognize it first so that they know that something's different. If they aren't learning about it, they don't know that what they're experiencing isn't what everybody else is going through. If they don't know, they're just thinking, well, everybody else is smiling too. They must all feel like crap, just like me, so I'm just going to work through it and I'm going to handle it until I can't. It's not fair. So, anything else? Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for having me here with your kids and all of you for taking the time out tonight. I know it was a choice to be here and I really do appreciate it. I really do. Thank you.